The conference room was dead silent except for the soft scratching of pens on paper. 23 signatures stood between Apex Cloud Solutions and the largest contract in our company history, a $900 million deal. The air smelled of expensive leather and corporate politics. All eyes were on the mahogany table where the final documents sat, waiting for approval. That is when Stuart Campbell cleared his throat. Before we proceed, he announced, his voice cutting through the anticipation, I want to address an operational restructuring that will take effect immediately. My stomach dropped. Something in his tone was completely wrong. He turned to me with a plastic smile. Gary, your services are no longer required. You have been dead weight for months, and frankly, we need actual talent to execute contracts of this magnitude. Security will escort you out. The room froze. Someone gasped. I felt 23 pairs of eyes shift to me, but I did not panic. I did not raise my voice. I smiled because Stuart Campbell had just made the most expensive mistake of his career, and he had absolutely no idea. My name is Gary Vance. Until that exact moment, I had been the Vice President of Infrastructure Operations at Apex Cloud Solutions for 8 years. The title sounds fancy, but my background was anything but corporate. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood where people fixed their own engines because mechanics were a luxury. My father worked double shifts at a manufacturing plant. My mother cleaned houses during the day and took night classes to finish her degree. They taught me that real work solves real problems and that understanding how systems operate matters more than impressing people. They showed me that when you construct something from the ground up, you must understand every single bolt and screw. That work ethic carried me through college and into my early technical career, where I focused on building practical, tangible solutions rather than chasing corporate accolades. When I started at Apex Cloud Solutions, I was not interested in climbing ladders or playing politics. I wanted to build systems that worked. I spent my time in hot server rooms understanding every cable, every routing protocol, and every single point of potential failure. My team was not flashy. We did not generate sales directly, so we were invisible to executives like Stuart. Stuart Campbell had joined as Chief Executive Officer 14 months prior. He came from a rival firm, brought in by our board to scale the business. From day one, his style clashed with our culture. We valued substance. He valued spectacles and press releases. Within his first 90 days, he replaced 4 competent department heads with people from his former company. All of them had impressive business degrees, but zero understanding of how our systems operated. I watched talented engineers get pushed out because they were not aligned with his vision, but they left my department alone because infrastructure was not glamorous. That was their first major error. Their second mistake was not reading the contracts they inherited. 3 years before Stuart arrived, our company faced a critical problem. We had landed a massive government contract for a data management system for federal agencies. The requirements were intense. 99.99% uptime and strict security. Building that infrastructure through traditional corporate channels would have taken 18 months and cost $7 million that the company did not have. Our old chief executive officer, Donald Cole, was desperate. The contract had penalty clauses that would bankrupt the firm. I came to Donald with an unconventional proposal. I would personally finance and build the server infrastructure through my own independent entity, Vance LLC. Apex Cloud Solutions would lease the capacity from me at cost. In exchange, I retained complete ownership of the physical servers and the proprietary operating software. The lease agreement included terms protecting both parties. Donald Cole approved it, and our lawyers drafted an airtight contract. Donald had been a true leader, a veteran engineer who understood that reliable infrastructure was the foundation of all client trust. He respected my expertise, and we spent weeks refining the legal protections to ensure my investment was secure. I spent my life savings and took out personal loans to buy the servers. I personally configured the security protocols. The system launched 2 weeks early and operated flawlessly with zero downtime for 3 years. That infrastructure became the foundation for everything Apex Cloud Solutions built. Every major client we acquired ran on systems connected to that framework, but because it ran so smoothly, people assumed it ran itself. By the time Stuart arrived, Everyone had forgotten that the servers powering 70% of our operations were owned by Vance LLC. I stood up from the conference table. Stewart looked at me with a mix of arrogance and impatience. His new chief operating officer, Oliver Walsh, who had followed him from his previous company, stood beside him, arms crossed. They expected me to beg or at least argue. Instead, I gathered my folder and adjusted my jacket. I looked at Diana Albright, the chief executive officer of Grover Global Enterprises, who was sitting across the table. Her eyes were narrowed, evaluating the situation. I looked back at Stewart. "Appreciated," I said calmly. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, escorted by 2 security guards. The silence in the room followed me all the way to the elevators. I knew that the moment I left the building, a countdown had begun, and the very foundation of the company was about to shake under Stewart's feet. I walked out of the glass skyscraper and into the bright sunlight of the parking lot. The security guards who accompanied me looked embarrassed. One of them, Devin, had worked with me on server facility access protocols for years. He apologized quietly under his breath. I told him not to worry about it. He was just doing his job. I got into my truck, sat in the cabin, and let the quiet wash over me. My phone was already vibrating with messages from my team. They had seen the security escort and were panicked. I sent a short message to my senior engineers, telling them to stay calm, perform their duties, and not to delete or modify any files. I told them I would contact them soon. I drove straight to the office of Rachel Torres, my attorney. She had helped me draft the original server lease agreement 3 years ago. When I walked into her office and explained what had just happened at the signing table, she did not look worried. She actually laughed. She opened her filing cabinet and pulled out the Vance LLC contract with Apex Cloud Solutions. "Let us review the termination clause," Rachel said, running her finger down the page. The agreement was clear. Vance LLC leased the server infrastructure to Apex Cloud Solutions under the condition that I remained employed in a decision-making technical role. If I was terminated without cause, or if I resigned due to a material breach, the lease would automatically terminate. I had the right to revoke all access to the server infrastructure with exactly 72 hours' notice. There was no transition period required if the termination was public and without cause. Stewart Campbell did not perform basic due diligence, Rachel noted. If he had spent 10 minutes reading the active contracts, he would have known that firing you would shut down his entire business. We discussed our legal approach, confirming that my ownership of the physical servers and the operating code was absolute. Rachel advised me to document every system state and communication from the company during the next 3 days. "I want to file the formal revocation notice immediately," I told my attorney. "Let the 72-hour clock start today." Rachel nodded and began drafting the document. She would send it via certified courier to Apex Cloud Solutions General Counsel before the end of the day. While she worked, I went home. My wife, Sarah, was waiting. We had been married for 25 years, and she had supported me through the stressful years of building Vance LLC. When I told her about the firing, she made coffee and sat with me at the kitchen table. She was not angry. She knew that Stewart had just handed us all the cards. We had built the system, we owned the hardware, and we held the legal rights. We talked about the personal loans we had taken to fund the servers and how hard we had worked to make the network flawless. It was a massive financial risk back then, but now it was our ultimate shield. The next morning, the corporate machine was still moving, unaware of the impending cliff. Apex Cloud Solutions was scheduled to run a live demonstration of the new system for Grover Global Enterprises and several government inspectors at our main testing facility. The demonstration was critical for finalizing the $900 million contract. Diana Albright had made it clear that she wanted to see the system handle real-time data transfers across 3 mock regional hubs. Stewart Campbell was at the testing facility, parading around in an expensive suit, explaining to the inspectors how Apex Cloud Solutions had built the most reliable platform in the industry. He took credit for the design, the uptime, and the security protocols. My senior engineer, Devin, was in the control room monitoring the feeds. He sent me private updates. He told me Stewart was acting as if he had personally coded the algorithms. At exactly 12 o'clock, the 72-hour notice period was halfway through. The system was performing well, but the countdown was ticking. I sat in my study, watching the system logs on my private terminal. I could see the connections from the testing facility routing through my servers. I had built a dashboard that monitored every active session. I was not going to sabotage the system. I was simply going to enforce the contract. When the 72 hours expired, the lease would end, and the servers would reject all incoming requests from Apex Cloud Solutions domain. By the second day, Stewart's assistant sent me an email. The subject line was urgent infrastructure credentials. The email requested that I hand over the administrator passwords and server access keys to Oliver Walsh, the new chief operating officer. The email claimed that as part of my departure, I was required to transition all company assets. I forwarded the email to Rachel Torres. She replied to Stewart's assistant, copying the general counsel, stating that the servers and software were the property of Vance LLC, not Apex Cloud Solutions, and that the lease agreement was currently under revocation notice. She attached a copy of the original contract signed by Donald Cole and the board. The general counsel must have realized the danger because I received 5 phone calls from him within an hour. I did not answer. I let them go to voicemail. He sounded increasingly desperate, asking for an urgent meeting to discuss a transition agreement. But the time for meetings was running out. The 72-hour deadline was set to expire at midnight. At exactly 12:01 in the morning, on the 4th day after my termination, the 72-hour revocation period ended. My servers, located in 3 private data centers that I leased directly, executed the automated shutdown script. The script did not erase any data, nor did it damage the hardware. It simply closed the virtual ports and revoked the security certificates assigned to Apex Cloud Solutions. The impact was immediate. Across the country, the operations of 32 major clients came to a sudden halt. Field crews inspecting energy pipelines could no longer sync their data. Regional offices lost access to their cloud storage. The live tracking system used by Grover Global Enterprises went completely dark. By 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone was ringing continuously. I switched it to silent and had breakfast with Sarah. The corporate offices of Apex Cloud Solutions were in absolute chaos. Stewart Campbell and Oliver Walsh had arrived at the headquarters to find their internal dashboard flashing red. They had no access to 70% of their operations. Instead of calling me to negotiate, Stewart made another critical mistake. He hired an external cybersecurity firm to force access to the servers. He instructed them to bypass the security protocols and override the administrator locks. My monitoring system logged every single unauthorized attempt. They tried to brute force the firewalls and clone the proprietary routing software. They spent hours trying to bypass our secure sockets and replicate the firmware that controlled our remote connections. I called Rachel Torres immediately. "This is a direct violation of federal law," I told my lawyer. She agreed. Under Title 35 of the United States Code, Section 271, any unauthorized use or replication of patented technology constitutes patent infringement. Since the lease had terminated, their attempts to bypass my security and run their services on my proprietary system were illegal. Furthermore, they were trying to copy my patented routing algorithms. Rachel explained that Section 271 covers not just direct infringement, but also inducing infringement and contributory infringement, which would hold the cybersecurity firm and individual executives personally liable. She emphasized that federal patent courts take a very dim view of companies that willfully try to hack their own former employees to steal technology. We would seek injunctions and substantial damages. Rachel drafted a formal cease and desist letter. She cited Title 35 of the United States Code, Section 271, and warned that Vance LLC would file a federal lawsuit seeking treble damages for willful infringement if they did not cease their hacking attempts immediately. She also pointed out that any attempt to present forged documents claiming ownership of the servers would face severe criminal penalties under the state forgery laws, rendering any disputed transfer void ab initio. This forgery warning was crucial because we had heard from internal contacts that Oliver was searching for the original signature pages to see if they could alter them. By the afternoon, the news of the system outage had leaked to the press. The stock price of Apex Cloud Solutions began to drop rapidly, losing 15% of its value in a single day. Grover Global Enterprises announced that they were suspending the signing of the $900 million contract. Diana Albright released a public statement saying that she would not partner with a firm that could not guarantee operational stability or manage its own infrastructure. Stuart Campbell was panicking. He called an all-hands meeting at the office and tried to blame my team. He claimed that disgruntled engineers had sabotaged the network. He suspended Devon and 2 other senior technicians without pay, accusing them of conspiracy. He threw a massive tantrum in the middle of the open plan office, throwing a tablet against the glass partition and screaming that he would make sure none of them ever worked in the tech sector again. When Devon called me, his voice was shaking. "Gary, he is trying to ruin us," he said. "He is threatening to call the police and file charges for corporate sabotage." I told Devon to remain calm. I told him to gather his personal belongings and walk out. I promised him that Vance LLC would cover his salary and provide legal defense if necessary. I also reminded him of the Federal Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, commonly known as the Warnin Act, under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101. The company had laid off or suspended several employees in our department without the mandatory 60-day notice, which was a clear violation of federal labor laws. Since Apex Cloud Solutions employed more than 100 workers, Stuart's sudden action violated Title 29, Section 2101, exposing the company to immediate liability for back pay and benefits for every day they were suspended. "We have them cornered, Devon," I said. "Do not say a word to Stuart or Oliver. Just walk out." By the end of the day, my engineering team had left the building. The server rooms were empty, and the screens remained dark. Stuart's cybersecurity contractors had failed to breach the encryption. The firewalls held, and the system remained completely locked. Apex Cloud Solutions was bleeding money, and their reputation was dying in public. On the 5th day, the board of directors of Apex Cloud Solutions stepped in. They had bypassed Stuart Campbell entirely. I received a call from Dennis Fowler, a senior board member who had been a close ally of Donald Cole. Dennis was a reasonable man who understood the reality of the situation. He asked for an urgent meeting at a neutral location. I agreed to meet him at Rachel Torres's law office that afternoon. When Sarah and I arrived, Dennis Fowler was waiting in the conference room. He was joined by Helen Price, another board member, and Lawrence Okoye, the company's general counsel. Stuart Campbell was not present, but Oliver Walsh sat in the corner, looking deflated. "Let us get straight to the point," Dennis Fowler said, placing his hands on the table. "We know the position we are in. The board was not informed of the lease terms, nor were we consulted before Stuart terminated your employment. We want to resolve this immediately. You terminated my husband in public, calling him dead weight," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "You accused his team of sabotage and threatened them with legal action. The damage to his reputation is significant." "We apologize for that," Helen Price said quickly. "The board has already voted to reinstate your husband to his former position with full back pay and a public retraction of all accusations against the engineering team. We also want to restore the server lease under the original terms." I looked at Dennis, then at Lawrence Okoye. "Reinstatement is not going to work," I said. "The trust is gone. I will not work under Stuart Campbell, and I will not lease my infrastructure under the old terms." "What are you proposing?" Dennis asked. I slid a document across the table. Rachel and I had prepared 2 options. Option 1. Apex Cloud Solutions purchases the server infrastructure and the software patents outright from Vance LLC. The purchase price is $12 million, which represents the fair market value of the hardware and the proprietary code. I will manage a 90-day transition period, and then I will walk away. Option 2. I return to the company, but not as vice president. I return as chief technology officer, with full executive authority over all technical operations and a seat on the board. My salary will be adjusted to market rate for chief technology officers, and I will receive an equity package of 5% of the company's shares. Furthermore, the server lease with Vance LLC will be renegotiated at market rates, not at cost, providing a steady lease payment to my LLC. Dennis Fowler read the terms. He looked at Lawrence Okoye, who was running numbers on a pad. $12 million is a steep price for option 1, Lawrence noted. But option 2 keeps the infrastructure active and secures your expertise. If we refuse both, Oliver Walsh spoke up from the corner, his voice defensive. He tried to argue that they could simply migrate the services to a generic cloud provider within a couple of weeks, bypassing my hardware entirely. He claimed that there were dozens of virtual server providers in the market who would be happy to host our client systems for a fraction of the cost, and that my Vance LLC was holding them hostage. He argued that we were replaceable and that no single engineer should have that much control over an enterprise company's operational capability. I turned to him and shook my head. Oliver, you have no idea how our system operates, I said. Migrating 70% of our operations to a generic cloud provider would require recertifying all our military-grade security protocols. Under our federal contracts, that recertification process takes at least 18 months. If you shut down our active servers during that time, you violate the compliance standards, and the government will terminate the contracts and sue for damages. It is a technical impossibility to migrate without losing all your clients. You would be in breach of contract with every single one of those 32 major clients, leading to class action lawsuits that would dissolve Apex Cloud Solutions before you could even write a single line of replacement code. Dennis Fowler turned to Oliver. "Be quiet, Oliver," he said sharply. "You and Stewart have caused enough damage. We have already received written notice from Grover Global Enterprises' legal team that the contract is terminated because of breach of warranties regarding key technical personnel and ownership of technology. We are on the edge of bankruptcy because of your arrogance." He looked visibly aged, rubbing his temples as if trying to block out the disaster Stewart had built. He turned to me and sighed. "Gary, we approved your original LLC lease because we knew the value of your work. The board knows Stewart made a fatal error. We want you back to lead the company's technology." Dennis turned back to me. "We need 24 hours to discuss this with the full board. But I can tell you that we cannot afford to lose the infrastructure. We will put together a proposal that addresses your equity requirements and present it to the board for a vote." I stood up and shook Dennis's hand. "Take the time you need, Dennis. But remember, every hour your servers are dark, you are losing clients. The 72-hour notice has passed, and my terms are non-negotiable. The board of directors did not need 24 hours. They called Rachel Torres at 8 o'clock that evening to confirm they had accepted option 2. The announcement went out the following morning. Stewart Campbell and Oliver Walsh were dismissed from their roles immediately. The press release stated that the board had appointed Gary Vance as Chief Technology Officer, effective immediately, to oversee the modernization of the company's digital infrastructure. My first act as Chief Technology Officer was to reinstate my entire team. Devin returned as Director of Infrastructure, with a substantial salary increase and full compensation for his short suspension. The false accusations of sabotage were retracted publicly. I met with Devin, Elena, and Julian in our old conference room. They were thrilled to be back, and I gave them their new contract offers. Julian was particularly relieved because his new signing bonus completely wiped out his substantial student loans, allowing him to focus on engineering rather than debt. I then contacted Diana Albright at Grover Global Enterprises. We met in her office to discuss the $900 million contract. I explained that under my leadership as Chief Technology Officer, the infrastructure would be managed directly under a new, robust lease agreement between Vance LLC and Apex Cloud Solutions. I guaranteed that the system would operate with the same 99.99% uptime she had seen in the past. Deanna was impressed by the transparency. "I like dealing with the person who actually owns the keys," she said. "If we are going to trust our data to a partner, we want to know that the technical leadership has real authority and ownership." We had a long meeting mapping out the security framework, and she expressed complete confidence in my technical oversight. She even noted that she had questioned Stewart's operational capacity during the initial presentations, and my public departure had confirmed her worst fears about his management style. We signed a revised contract worth $750 million. which was still the largest contract in our company's history. The news of the signing stabilized our stock, which recovered all its lost value within a week. The market reacted with massive confidence, and our shares soared past their previous high. Over the next 2 years, the company grew rapidly. My independent entity, Vance LLC, received monthly lease payments at market rates, providing financial security for my family. I hired a small team of engineers to maintain the physical servers, ensuring that the hardware was always updated. We expanded our capacity, setting up new nodes in European and Asian markets to support our global clients. Sarah managed the financial accounts of the LLC, ensuring that our corporate structure remained perfectly optimized. We were no longer just leasing space. We were a recognized player in the enterprise infrastructure domain, proving that engineering excellence is a valuable asset. I had no desire for revenge against Stuart Campbell, but the corporate consequences of his actions were clear. He was unable to find another chief executive officer role in the tech sector. His reputation as an arrogant, short-sighted manager had spread throughout the industry. He eventually took a position as a consultant for a small logistics firm, far removed from the high-stakes tech mergers he had dreamed of managing. One afternoon, I ran into him at a coffee shop near our old headquarters. He looked older, less polished and tired. His signature suit was replaced by a simple jacket, and his hair was beginning to gray. He asked if he could join me for a minute, and I agreed. We sat at a corner table, and he stirred his coffee in silence for a moment, looking out of the window at the skyscraper he once ruled. "I wanted to apologize, Gary," he said, looking down at his cup. "I was arrogant. I thought leadership was just about managing numbers, cutting costs, and projecting confidence. I did not realize that the people who build the machines are the ones who actually keep the company alive. I lost my career, my reputation, and my marriage because of that mistake. It was a hard lesson to learn. I appreciated the apology. It takes a big mistake to learn that lesson, Stuart," I told him. "I wish you the best in your new role." We shook hands, and I walked back to my office. Today, at 51 years old, I stand in the server facility that I built with my own savings. The hum of the cooling fans is a constant reminder of the work it took to get here. I did not win this battle through shouting or corporate politics. I won because I built something of real value, documented my ownership, and let the contracts speak for themselves. The servers are still running, the system is secure, and everyone knows exactly who owns the infrastructure. That is not revenge. It is just honest accounting. If you build the foundation, make sure you keep the deed. When young engineers ask me for advice, I tell them to focus on the work, but never ignore the contracts. Real equity is built on real ownership, and that is a lesson every creator should keep close to their heart.